This is Ray Oxenford. He's a tinsmith, uses very traditional 18th and 19th century tools to make tin objects of the type that were used by early America. The picture is part of my American Hands project, in which I celebrate people who keep the old trades alive. When I went to Ray's workshop to photograph him, it's a very jumbled, dark workshop, as many of these types of places are. With the tin and with the sense of light that his own art creates, I really wanted to find some way to emulate what I love of Renaissance lighting. I used a two-light setup. One is coming from his right, and it's a bit higher than he is. I used gold umbrellas because there was such a golden sense in the room to give it a warmer look to the light. And then I have a smaller umbrella, smaller exposure, EV value light, to his left and a little bit lower to fill in the shadow a bit. I also, though, wanted to have the sense of his workshop behind him, which I had to clean up, by the way. He was very amused how I was pushing things away to keep them from being behind his head or his shoulder. But I wanted to have the sense of the workshop in the shadows, and that's part of where I'm inspired by paintings specifically, such as the Night Watch, that yes, I wanted light to sculpt him, but I also wanted, as David calls it, the dimensionality of the shadows, the layering of the shadows. I also wanted to use the way the light was hitting the tin and how that reflected up to his face. I wanted him to participate in the picture. That's why he's connecting with me, but also his tin is adding to the light. The other aspect that I learned from my misspent youth in museums was angles and energy. Nothing is a straight line here, and I am hopefully using a classic spiral to bring the viewer's eye to his face and his hands, and his face and his hands, but also spiraling outward and spiraling inward, so that we see that clamped to his side and the cabinetry behind him, but we also see some of the energy in his arms. The angles, I get very unhappy with angles that don't converge, that lines that don't push you further and further into a picture. And very straight lines, unless there is a very determined reason. And in some of David's landscapes, I see straight lines that I never would have put in there. And I love the way he uses them, but I would never have used, or I seldom use, a perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal. I need to try what you do sometimes, though, because sometimes it works beautifully. When you do it, it works beautifully, David. Did you have any comments about the light and shadow and such?
I do have some comments about this, and what I want to start with is talking about where do our eyes go first. And it's because of the light and the shadow and the way they are interlayered in this image. The first place my eyes land in this image is the face and hands. And I think it's because of the lighting and also the complementary shadows that you see in the image. So the hands, which are obviously part of his craft, but also the face, are so important to the feeling of this image. And the face, the way the face is lit, there's a strong light from the subject's right, but there's a complementary light from the left, almost a kicker. And it separates everything from the background. You can see some of the background, but the background is primarily in shadow. So the face and the hands come forward because they're so well lit in the image. And they bring your attention to them. And then secondarily, it creates a very strong sense of dimensionality. Also, the side lighting, which comes from the subject's right and our left, really creates a lot of texture and shadows, and that also helps create dimensionality in the image. So overall, it's a really excellent portrayal of the craftsman in his workshop, but it's also an excellent portrait.